I am not impressed. Welcome back, I'm Captain Xavier, and this is the start of a new irregular series that I'm going to be referring to as Slightly Unfair Reviews, in which I will compare similar blasters to each other, preferably new ones, but if there's only one new one but there are plenty of older examples, I will compare them that way. The whole idea is that we're comparing vaguely similar form factors or concepts or whatnot, and then the unfair portion will be that I will be comparing them to one of my modified blasters. I'll be comparing a whole slew of different aspects, things from cost, capacity, rate of fire, accuracy, ergonomics, aesthetics, all those various aspects between the various form factor, the various blasters in the series, and then I will compare them to the modified blaster to kind of give the idea of what kind of improvements could be made and how significant those improvements can be. So obviously I'm starting with miniguns because I like miniguns. We've got the Titan CS50 and the Adventure Force V-Twin. We'll be comparing them to each other, and then we will of course be comparing them to Tier, which is the slightly unfair portion of this. So let's get right to it. Alright, as I am fully aware that the vast majority of you probably have the attention span of a goldfish, we're going to start with the firing demonstrations first, and get into the blather about all of the rest later. So obviously I'm having issues with it hitting, so I'm going to try just some single shots to try to get FPS numbers. 80, 79, 90, 89, 89, 77, 84, 89. Alright, let's try a little bit more rapid and see if we can get rate of fire. Yeah, alright, so there we finally, it took a few tries. So single shots, you were getting into the 90s. Once you start rapid firing, it starts dropping down into the 60s, and you're getting about 6 darts a second, which is not bad. Let's just empty this. Alright, this thing is beastly. Let's see if we can get a couple of single shots to get the FPS readings. We're getting 60s, 70, oh, hit, 79, 60, oh, 81, 60, 80, 79, 79, 77. All right, let's dump and see if we can get a rate of fire going. Only 4. Interesting. Okay, so again, single shots you're getting into the 80s, but once you start rapid firing, it starts dropping closer to the 60s. Yeah, 60s. And then the rate of fire on this one is only 4 rounds a second, apparently. That's not impressive at all. Huh. Alright. Tier's turn. Probably not going to be able to fire through that, but I'm going to give it a try. Know how many rounds I put in this thing. Just bounced one off my forehead. Lovely. Ah, I forgot to put the dart catching thing back down. I've made a mess. Okay, well, Tier's coming in at 100 FPS at max rate of fire and 15 darts a second. So, that's not really fair. Alright, knowing the rate of fire is one thing. Seeing the rate of fire in action against a target is something entirely different. So, I'm going to do a full mag dump from both of these blasters and then a good long burst from Tier, just to give you an idea of the difference between them. I'm starting with the lowest. This one supposedly has about 4 darts per second. Let's see what happens. am not impressed. Next up, we'll try the smaller one. This one supposedly has about 6 rounds a second, and hopefully it's maybe a little bit more accurate. Sure all the darts are seated. Here we go. Jam already. Aside from an inordinate number of jams, I need to look into maybe I've got something wrong with it. It definitely seems to be a little bit more accurate and definitely a higher rate of fire. Too bad it's so small. Alright, enough fiddling about. Well, as I said in the video, I was not terribly impressed with the performance of the Titan. In addition to having a lower rate of fire than a Hyperfire, which is basically the same internals that it has, range and accuracy definitely seemed lackluster, as you can see in this next clip. Yeah, very poor accuracy, and the darts are kind of lobbing in there, whereas this one, having 6 darts per second, which is one more than the Hyperfire generally has, and decidedly more accurate and definitely more zing, as you can see in this clip. So yeah. Performance-wise, this one definitely seems to outperform. Now, that's not entirely surprising because this one runs on 6 AA's, making it a 9-volt system, whereas this one is running on 4 D cells, which makes it only a 6-volt system. And I don't know for sure because I haven't seen the internals, but I suspect this one might have one more motor in it than this one. This one, the barrels rotate on rev. So I would assume there's the 2 flywheels and the barrel rotation motor, and then there's the pusher motor. So there's 4 running off those 4 batteries. This one, the barrel rotates on fire, along with the belt rotating and the wheel that pushes the darts into the flywheels. I wouldn't be surprised if all of those are linked to a single motor, which means there's only 3 motors running off these 6 batteries. So that might explain the performance a little bit. But I won't know until I open them up. Mod potential-wise, they're pretty much equal. There's probably going to be third-party cages for this any day now. I wouldn't be surprised. They're probably already designing them. They may already be out and I just haven't seen them. If they exist, somebody send me a link. Because obviously this one is internally, like I said, a Hyperfire with just that one additional motor. So it's going to be able to take any of the mods we usually do to our flywheel blasters, the wheels, cages, upgraded motors, run it on a LiPo, you'll be able to do great things. You could also just throw like honey badgers in it and run it off the D cells and you'd get a performance boost. Same thing with this, you could just put honey badgers in it, or you could try modding it to the 9s. I don't know how well this firing mechanism would handle a higher upgrade. This one, like I said, just a Hyperfire, so you're going to be fine. You'll be able to get 14, 16 darts a second out of it with the right mods. So that one, you can get it up to good performance. This one, on the other hand, I don't know if that belt was feeding a lot faster and that pusher was going a lot faster, if it would work, or if that would result in it not feeding properly or jamming more. It's already, that belt system has some problems with jams, so I'm not sure how well that's gonna to translate over. So yeah, then of course you had tier, which looks like this when it's firing at you. terrifying. 15 rounds a second. It is kind of veering to one side. I'm wondering if one of the motors isn't starting to get worn out, and so you're getting kind of a side spin, kind of like hop up, but off to one side. It's not bad, but it also might have just been wind picking up the rival rounds. I don't know, but yeah. In addition to the high rate of fire, it's fairly accurate, or at least it's very consistent. The rounds all go to more or less the same place, so once you know where it's going, then you can hose with it. I think it is really cool that all three of these have a different feed mechanism. So we've got magazine fed, belt fed, hopper fed, which means 30 rounds, 50 rounds, 2,000 rounds. And this one, of course, has been fully modified with higher power motors and a high power pusher. And I'm considering simplifying it to make it fire even faster and to be a little bit more reliable. Though I haven't had any major failures in a while, so that's nice. Feed-wise, this one I didn't have much in the way of failures. I think I had one dart that was a little bit worn, get popped up and didn't get pushed properly, but other than that, I haven't had any issues with it not feeding all the way through. I don't know what was wrong with wall comms, but mine does not appear to have the same problems. The belt on this one I did have a number of feed issues with, and I actually think that is the result of them attempting to keep it from having feed issues. So generally the issue with belts is, of course, that if they're swinging around, they'll get misaligned and they won't feed properly. So that is why I think they added these two wheels out here, which also act as dart storage. So they each hold 15, so a full reload of darts can be stored in these pods. And they're obviously meant to keep the belt feeding through straight. The problem is there's nothing on the wheels to keep the belt from sliding forward on them like that. And if they get shifted slightly forward on this side, it'll actually pop off of the feed groove that's in there. They really needed a lip around the outer side to keep the belt in place. It doesn't have that, and so it'll actually cause jams rather than stopping them. And luckily, these do just pop off, and as near as I can tell, it feeds better when the belt is just hanging loose. You can get it, you have to get it pretty, you have to have it at least a 45-degree angle before it starts having a feed issue, whereas with the wheels on there, you figure out which side goes on which. You start seeing feed issues at a considerably less angle. So I find that kind of interesting. I don't know if they need to redesign these or if you should just run it without. I will probably run it without. So that's kind of the function. They do both live up to what the boxes say. So I don't feel there's any false advertising. It's just I've gotten used to a more powerful minigun. So let's talk about the aesthetics and the ergonomics, because I chose these blasters because of the aesthetics and the ergonomics. I wanted the things that were the quintessential minigun, the joystick handle, carry handle, rotating barrels. So there have been plenty of blasters in the past that had the rotating barrels. There have been a number of blasters in recent years that had the joystick handle and front carry handle, but these are the ones that had both. So like the Scorpion and even the Air Warriors Punisher and a lot of the other previous ones, they had this style handle, the lower one that you see down here, rather than a joystick handle. And then ones like the Prometheus and whatever the recent one came in that's hopper fed, they both had the carry handles like a minigun, but they didn't have the rotating barrels. Even Friga's, this barrel is just cosmetic, it doesn't rotate yet. I will probably add that eventually. So I wanted the ones that had both, like Tyr now does, because I really like that hip-fired ergonomic feel of the minigun. It's the heavy gun that that Terminator feel. I really like it. And so these both had it, so I decided to go with that. And they're not bad, ergonomically speaking, as far as how it feels when you're actually carrying it. This one's obviously very small, which is kind of a downside. It's half the size of Tyr, which, for a small child, fantastic. For an adult, it looks a little silly. Like this. Ah! Yeah. So this one is obviously almost the same size as Tyr. It's only a few inches shorter, and so you really get that heavy minigun feel, like you can see here. But of course, Tyr has it all. Come and get some! It's huge, it's beefy, it's got the weight to it. It has the full proper rotating barrels. This one kind of has them, but they're squashed and they're just, you know, cosmetic. This one doesn't even actually have full barrels. It's just a lumpy tube that rotates around. Whereas Tyr, full proper rotating barrel. It does shoot out of the middle, of course, but it really has those. But as far as the way the handles feel, this one fits even my big hands quite comfortably, and I'm suitably impressed by that. And I like that they went with a standard rev trigger, fire trigger combination. So the lower one is rev and the upper one is fire, which is what we're used to in our flywheel blasters. So it's very intuitive to operate, and I like that. The carry handle is a little bit small. It's like a half a pinky small for my big hands, but it's open on one side, so it doesn't really matter. This one, while it's nice and big, and I love the fact that they came out with a big minigun. They didn't try to make it small. They made it huge. The carry handle, the main handle, it would be big enough, except they have this blue portion that's coming up and has a squared off area that means that it's about a half a pinky too small for my big monkey hands. But they did the trigger differently than I would. It is still lower trigger is rev, upper trigger is fire, but the lower trigger is your trigger finger. And so in my mind, this should be rev and this should be fire because the trigger finger should be fire. That's just natural and intuitive to me. So obviously, unlike Frigga, I switched it. And when I mod this, I will switch it so that this is rev and this is fire, just because that's what makes sense to me. My biggest beef with this one, despite that it's nice and big, is that it's skinny. And I don't know why it's so skinny. It's at least half again the width of Tyr in many places. And I think that's largely exacerbated in my mind, and I'm biased, because the carry handle is too small. It's again, a half a pinky too small for me to be able to get my hand in there comfortably. And so it makes the whole thing feel flattened, squished, skinny. But it'll be super easy to change that. I'm sure someone will have a wider one would be easy to make. You can just replace this because it all comes apart. And it would be. The other thing I don't like about the carry handle, in addition to being too small, is that it's flexible. I would prefer one that is solid. I just feel it gives you better control of the blaster. This one is solid, this one's solid. Same thing with like the Prometheus. I'd like to replace it with a solid handle. So I probably could just taper or scale this one down to fit on here and just screw it in right there to those slotted area, and problem solve with both the size of the carry handle and it being hinged. Some people may prefer that. I don't. I do like that it does come with a sling, because this thing is huge and awkward to reload if you can't let go of it. And the sling points are well situated, so it doesn't get in the way of either of the handles, and I like that. Reloading is the other kind of... Both of these are not great. This one is at least a magazine, so you can just slap another magazine in it, another drum. It'll fit with any of the other drums, the 25, the 30, the 35, the 22 stick magazines. They all will work in here. But since it feeds from the bottom, that makes it kind of awkward to get to since you're firing from the hip. But carry handle lets you let go of it, and then you can, manually, manipulate all that. What I find odd is that the mag release is not ambidextrous. It's only on the right side. And it's kind of odd that it's on the right side, because that means it's on the outside, which I suppose if you're tilting it this way, you can pull it out and all of that. But personally, I think that actually makes it more left-hand friendly, because you can then pull the mag out with your offhand like you usually do and replace it while using your dominant hand to steady the blaster. That's just me. Other people may say, no, that's really good. I find it kind of odd that they went with a bottom feed rather than a side fed option, because it wouldn't have been hard to rotate that flywheel or that conveyor belt in sideways and have it feed from the side. I'm glad they didn't, because it would have been probably almost definitely much less left-hand friendly, because they probably would have had the magazine come out on the right side, so that if you're firing from the hip on your right side, the magazine would stick out sideways. They probably went with this. I don't know if they decided it looked better. There's obvious odd choices made with this particular blaster design. But I'm glad they went with that, because it does make it more ambidextrous. So, yeah, I'm definitely going to do a lot of interesting things to this one. This one, because it's belt-fed, that makes it much more awkward to reload. The other problem is that it takes a proprietary belt. Many of the previous belts from the off-brand companies were interchangeable because they all, had a pusher that went in the back. This one doesn't have a pusher that goes in the back, though you can use these belts on those because they do still have the hole in the back. So they will work, they're backwards compatible. But the old belts aren't, because this one uses a wheel right there that rotates to push darts into the flywheel. And so it's got a cutout on the top of the belt that allows that wheel to interact with your darts. And so if you could create a jig and add that notch to all of your old belts, you might be able to use them. But other than that, unless Adventure Force makes those belts available, you're only going to have the 130 round belt. Luckily, being a belt you can top off, and they do have the little pods that have extra that you can store darts in, or from a dump pouch or whatever. But swapping out belts is not an easy process. You have to open the jam door, you have to get the belt off, which is awkward, then you have to get the next belt on, which is awkward. And isn't going to be easy to do in a hurry, and you're likely to have your darts get slightly get pulled out a little bit, at which point they will quite definitely jam your blaster, which is, of course, not a good thing. With those pods removed, it does become a lot simpler to change out the belt. So that's another advantage to just not putting those on. The other thing is that the carry handle has a release button that allows you to just take it off, which makes it even easier to just swap out your belts. And these are light enough that you can easily, single-hand wield them, which I'd love to have a pair of them, really. I would probably get a second one just for that. So ergonomically, they're a little bit difficult to reload, but comfortable to operate, in my opinion. Comparing them to Tyr is actually much more difficult for the operator to reload, because you pretty much have to take the backpack off and open it up and dump balls in, and that's a pain, which is why it holds 2,000 rounds, so you don't have to reload. Somebody else can come up behind you and pour darts in through the hole in it fairly easily, but you can't fire while they're doing it because the tank has to be pressurized. So, yeah. There's the issue there. For cosmetic mods, they're both great blasters. This one is a huge full-size minigun with rotating barrel. You paint this thing up, or you steampunk this thing, or you cyberpunk it, or whatever. You can do great things with this blaster, and I do plan to. One of the ones I want to do is I want to build a minigun rifle. Put a heavy shoulder stock on it, put a pistol grip on it, take the top carry handles off entirely, and have a minigun rifle, which is from some video game, I'm sure, probably a couple of them. And that one I would probably do heavy internal modifications on, try to get the rate of fire as high as I can go and still have it be reliable and practical. And then I'll probably do one where I just put like honey badgers in it, just to get decent performance out of stock batteries, and leave that one like it is, so I have a nice, decent performing, less than 100 FPS blaster that I can, could be my big minigun that I can take places. And then I'll have the one that I mod to absurd levels just because I want it. Mostly, I want more drums. This one has also just some amazing mod potential, because this, like I said, this handle comes off, and since this handle is clearly a separate plastic that'll probably be easy to remove, it'd be really easy to move this up to here and make it arm mounted. And now you've got arm mounted minigun, and you could do one on both arms. It would then be real difficult to change out belts or even to reload, but it would be cool. It would also make it very easy to make a master key, a minigun master key using this, because, again, that handle comes off. Heck, you could have a minigun master key on your minigun. Wouldn't that be epic? It really does look like it just fits perfectly. The barrels are almost the same length. It would be absurd and ridiculous, and I love it. The last detail is, of course, cost, and I've covered that briefly. This one was like $34. You could get, and this one is $100. So you could get 3 of these for the price of 1 of these. You could be dual wielding these, firing 12 rounds a second. Or, yeah, and you know, for the price of for less than the price of 1 of these, firing 4 rounds a second. So there's that. Tier, I have no idea. People have asked me what did tier cost, and I don't know because it took me a year to build him, and I have no idea how many different parts got used. I went through several motors, several sets of flywheels. I went through all sorts of upgrades and iterations. I went through numerous batteries. The amount of time that went into the build, I could not even estimate how many hours went into this, which is one of the reasons I've said I will not make another one for anybody else, not for love nor money, don't ask. Because the amount that I would need to charge just to build another one, it simply wouldn't be worth it. The other issue is that much of the technology used in tier isn't mine. The whole barrel front end is Ari Armory's design, and I don't have his permission to make them to sell. Nor would I ask for it, because that's his. The agitator and the hopper is out of Darts' design. Luke designed that, and he's planning to make kits to sell, and when that happens, it would be possible for me to build proton packs for people by buying one from him and then using it as long as he was okay with that. But as it is, I don't have permission to use that to sell. So I couldn't even estimate a cost for tier. So the closest you're going to get to tier's size and aesthetics is going to be this one. This one does have the higher performance until you got this one, added up. And we have gotten Nerf blasters firing darts upwards of 14 to 16 darts per second. So it is possible, especially with the Hyperfire design, it's even easier. You don't have to worry about runaway because it's a conveyor belt design. So there is a lot of potential to be able to get this up to roughly this level. The capacity is what you're never going to meet. You're never going to get that 2,000 round capacity that tier has in anything that isn't a proton pack. Possibly in hopper-fed stuff, but then you end up with a huge hopper. So you really got to get to that backpack design to really get the capacity that you're going to get with tiers. Yeah, they're really cool. I like them. They definitely have a lot of potential. Stock performance is what you would expect, and comparing it to something like tier is obviously not fair, but that's the point of this series. So there you have it. That is the first episode of Slightly Unfair Reviews. The next one I will probably be going over the rival pistols. I'm still trying to get a hold of the X-Shot Meteor, but I've obviously already got Kronos, and I recently picked up the other one. So, yeah, that'll probably be the next episode, and it will happen whenever I get my hands on a Meteor. So there you have it. Let me know what you guys think of this series, if you think this is a fun series, or if you think this is a terrible series and why are you doing this. Let me know down in the description. And thank you guys for watching. Now, for the cleanup.
I've made a terrible mess, and now I must clean it up. Where's my garden weasel? The Nut Gatherer. By Garden Weasel. Get yourself one.